Welcome back to another episode on the Recruitcha podcast. My name's Harrison,
Drew.
and today we're going to be talking about how startup founders can pitch their roles to win talent against offers from FAANG. Drew's got over 10 years of experience in the game in San Francisco, and we're going to be hearing a lot of insights from him in terms of being a recruiter in the Bay Area and how startup founders can win. So, Drew, kicking us off, you've been in the space for a while. How have the dynamics between FAANG companies and non-FAANG companies competing for the same talent evolved during your career?
Yeah, I think personally, I think the playing field has really leveled a lot over the last, like 10 years or so, right? You think about like a decade back, Fang was everything, right? It was a guaranteed yes. That's where everybody wanted to kind of like take their career. Um, you know, Now I think it really is what are you going to be able to offer at your startup, right? That's going to provide a better experience, better growth opportunities, better career mentorship, anything. Which it's really just all about how you're going to go about positioning yourself versus Meta or Apple, anything like that.
100%. And this is something that we've heard a lot from our candidates when we're having conversations with them about roles. The number one thing they often say is, what is the work that I'm doing? Is it interesting? Is it a hard problem? What is the direction of the company? And most often that is one of the things that can really sell a role. So if you're a startup founder, really dialing into your story and the mission that you're trying to do is one of the big ways that you can win over someone who's deciding between you and going to FANG. Let's talk about misconceptions. Are there any misconceptions that you think startups have about competing with Meta, Google, or Amazon for top talent?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the one misconception is like they can't pay, right? Like a Meta, like an Apple. And many times from a cash basis perspective, that is very true. It's not wise, for a startup to be paying that. It's like, what are you providing them outside of just strictly compensation, right? Obviously, the equity upside is going to be there, as well as just like what that individual is going to earn in terms of like true career acceleration, visibility, and the equity of actually like building something that's meaningful. And being able to take a product right from an earlier stage and really build it into something. Whereas, when you join a company like Google, right, you are working on a very small uh, piece of a very large pie.
100%. And just talking about that, for listeners who always assume that FANG companies are going to win the talent war because of compensation, can you recall any specific example where you saw an offer from another startup win over a candidate and that made the difference?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think there was a candidate that I placed that had an offer from Meta, simultaneous with the offer was at a Series B startup. The startup didn't try to match on comp. Like, simply put, the founder personally showed the candidate like they would be leading a specific product, involved with the strategy. They would be mentoring a small team, and really kind of like painted the picture of the growth and kind of like how their career would be accelerated by joining this organization versus like just becoming another number at Meta. Ultimately, I honestly think like comp was probably 50K less, from 50 to 60K less than what Meta was offering. And ultimately, the decision came down to they felt that they were going to be able to grow more and accelerate their career by joining the startup.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that a lot of it has to do with the mission. Yes, compensation is of course important, and we can talk a little bit more about that and equity. But it sounds like as the startup founder, what you want to do is position your opportunity and the growth of your company as the most appealing thing for that candidate.
Yep.
100%. So in terms of compensation, one of the biggest sells for a startup is the growth potential of the equity. Do you have any comments on that in terms of startup founders and how they can position that as part of the offering?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, it really depends. Like, if it's a pre-seed company, and um, they're giving up they're going to be receiving a larger piece of the pie. But of course, at that stage, pre-product market fit, still an extremely risky bet. And anybody that's joining a startup, right? They certainly um, understand there is a bit of a gamble that comes to it, but that's also the excitement of it, right? Like, think about the excitement of joining Facebook at the time, right? When it was 15, 20 people, right? And what that equity can be down the road. Um, I think the people that choose to join startups, they choose to join startups because they're passionate about what the startup offers. And a lot of times, the people that like um, the pace at FAANG, the the people that want to join a startup are honestly looking for something entirely different out of their career than the people that are looking to join at a FAANG type company.
Right. And is there any difference in those motivations that you see as experience levels change? So we work with candidates of all ranges, even from, 2 years experience all the way up to 10 years of experience. Is there any typical profile that you see the motivation starting to change a lot?
Yeah, so I think when you're early in your career, a lot of people think about just like truly really wanting to uh, have impact, right? The like impact is the biggest thing. They don't just want to be thrown in the back of a large engineering team. They want to have impact. And then on the the later stage, like once you're mid to later stage in your career, especially if you've already done a stint at a FANG type company or any large organization where you've had you've already put that stamp on your resume that says, hey, I'm a good engineer. um, I think a lot of that's where we see a lot of people that are like, okay, I've done that thing with the large company. Now it's time to take what I've learned there and really be able to be an instrumental figure in building out the product here.
100%. And that's this pattern that we've seen over and over again is hiring managers will often ask us for 2 to 3 years at a FANG or a large company to have that hyperscaler growth type experience. And then also ideally some startup experience at a very early stage company. What do you think candidates should be thinking about as they make career choices in the early stages about that dynamic of going big company or going small company?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to like everybody's personal preference and what they're truly evaluating and what's going to make them happy and what's going to, if I always talk to candidates and say like, in 10 years, are you going to be able to look back on what you built at XYZ company, or are you going to be excited about what you built at, Meta, right? Um, if you're excited about Meta, then maybe it's the right fit for you, right? But if you're excited about taking something that is in its infancy and building it up to what it can be, and if you think that that's going to be more exciting in terms of like life fulfillment, then that's probably the path for you. But of course there are absolutely some people that think that um, like their end all be all is to join a FANG type company, and if that opportunity presents itself, it really is the right play for them. So there's no end all be all answer, right? Obviously those companies have become great companies for a reason. um, it really comes down to kind of like what that individual is going to be fulfilled by building.
I agree with you. And I will say, though, from the experience with our clients, the pattern does seem to be if you are a computer science grad from a decent university or college, and you've got a couple of years at FANG, say 2 or 3, and then you want to work at a startup or you've already worked at a startup, that is an absolutely killer combo that almost every single time, as long as you have a decently looking resume, you'll get a foot in the door.
Yeah, certainly. To counter that point though, I do think that experience, at a early stage startup is probably more valuable than working at a FANG type company. If a hiring manager is comparing one versus the other, just head to head, um, of course it looks great that the individual is coming from FANG. But if the individual is coming from another early stage startup, they already understand the pace, they understand working the scrappiness. Um, Obviously it's a lot more cushy of a job if you're working at a FANG type company. And that does,
100%.
from time to time scare off hiring managers.
Right. Just in terms of wrapping up, are there any other comments that you have for candidates or for hiring managers on the candidate side, thinking about their career transitions, or on the hiring manager side, positioning your career opportunities against FANG?
Yeah, so I think, as far as from a company's perspective, don't try to be like FANG-esque. Like if you're a startup, you're not FANG, right? Like, accept that the reality is, you need to find what makes it tick for you, right? Is it speed? Is it ownership? Is it equity? Is it the culture? The best founders are kind of able to make the candidates um, feel like joining their company is the right is like they're stepping on a rocket ship, right? And if you can't paint that picture for them, like that's where you're going to lose. But you really have to be able to showcase why this is the right opportunity for them.
Right. So just to wrap up the episode, what I'm hearing for non-FAANG companies, as in most companies that might be listening to this, startup founders, it's really think about your vision and your mission that you're going to be presenting to someone. What is the story behind your company? And you really use that to sell candidates on why you are a good company to join. Of course, the conversation needs to be there, but you can also use, the growth potential of your company with the equity that you're giving them to sell this opportunity. Drew, thanks so much for joining once again, and we will see you all in the next episode.
Absolutely. Take care.